Welcome to everyone. My name is Susan Gerber-Burning, and I am the interim director of the Woodlawn and Pope-Leighey House, a historic site located in Alexandria, Virginia. And we are home to two iconic properties: Woodlawn, a former plantation with over 90 enslaved that was originally part of George Washington's Mount Vernon. And we have the Pope-Leighey House, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. We are also home to the Arcadia Center for Sustainable Food and Agriculture, which they provide quality food to food deserts in this area, in the DC area. As a historic venue, our mission is to tell the full, truthful history of the site, focusing especially on the site's indigenous history through to its plantation history and the stories of the lives of the enslaved. We also talk about the anti-slavery activism among later occupants and the history in the community of free Blacks and Quakers in the region. One way in which we strive to share these stories is through partnering with historians, descendants, and local artists and poets on relevant programming, which is why we are all here today. And before I introduce today's speaker, I do want to go over just a couple of items with you. During this hour, we will keep your microphones muted, and we would like you to also be aware that this session is being recorded. So if you have your camera on, your image may incidentally be shown as part of this call in future materials, promotional materials on our website. During the Voices of Woodlawn presentation, please type your questions and comments into the chat section of your screen. And look down below, you should see a chat button at the bottom of your screen. After the poet's presentation, I will facilitate sharing your question from the chat feed with them. And now I'd like to say that we at Woodlawn are so grateful for the Voices of Woodlawn and for their continued partnership with us at this historic site, for their honesty, their perspective, and the truths that they will bring to us today. And I want to thank all of you all for attending today. Your attendance here is so important, and it makes a full community for us on this call. As well, this presentation, though, will likely draw a variety of emotions. And at this time, we ask that you keep all your questions and comments relevant and thoughtful and courteous of the artists and the others at this presentation. I am now honored to introduce the esteemed poets of Voices of Woodlawn: Diane Wilbon Parks, Patrick Washington, Sylvia Dianne Beverly, Lady Di, we'll put that, Hiram Larew, and poet and harmonica player Cliff Bernier. Sorry, Cliff. These artists confront sadness and anger, injustice, a lot of personal feelings, and there's confusion along with the motivations for their poems. And so as they give voice to the erased lives of the enslaved at Woodlawn, I encourage you to think about their experience as they went through historic sites, and also to read their full bios of these accomplished artists located on the Woodlawn and Pope-Leighey website. So at this time, I'll happily turn this platform over to the Voices of Woodlawn for your presentation. Thank you.
The night is beautiful. So the faces of my people. The stars are beautiful. So the eyes of my people. Beautiful also is the sun. Beautiful also are the souls of my people. Langston Hughes. Cliff, I think I went before you. Cliff. Welcome to Voices of Woodlawn, featuring Poets Diane Wilbon Parks, Hiram Larew, Patrick Washington, yours truly, Lady Di, and on harmonica, poet Cliff Burnett. We are sharing original poetry written during and since our visit to Woodlawn Plantation Mansion in Fairfax, Virginia. Each of us hope to educate, enlighten hearts and souls and minds. And the paintings that you just saw are original work from our very own Diane Wilbon Parks. Just sit back and enjoy this Black History celebration.
This poem was written as I was wandering the grounds of Woodlawn. It's titled Vista Blur. Clouds of branches unsettling were, as smoke became windows or lingering hams. Thin voices in sad vines as I walked up. Yes, as I began to almost hear their echoes of what was, but is still blurred. What happened here? These voices from long ago that now precious the lawn sweeps across vistas of yearnings that river my overs. They hide in the corners. Their cries for freedoms are so wanted. With these views of sunrises and mist that hope surely prayed for and gathered about. These views that are gone now, that are just barely and blurred blue. I can almost hear small whispers of accents, sweet as the oaks. Voices that were here when abiding was tobacco and corn, and poorly was riches. Yes, all of my hoops are flung widely across these skins of years. What happened here? Around me and by me and through me. These forked times of hillsides and shame. Cuffs that sob in their rust, or ropes frayed, or gilded mirrors of my memories, me. The full fields of sorrow from those times that have sprouted again, but are buried so deep down inside me. The scars or gasps or flames in souls, their silent prayers, they all come through and are asking me, what happened here? From my long ago that was then, but is still now again and again. This evil, holy aftertell.
Thank you, Hiram. The title of the poem that I will read, I actually wrote when I was at Woodlawn, and it is entitled Reclamation. This is to the enslaved. I am here to interpret the life of the enslaved. I am here to discover what was and what was not. I am here to carry your voice in my hand, hold it up to the sky, where your voice will speak words into mine. From the fields to the bricks, to the compounding metal shovels, digging inside my hand, your hands, your stories, without words, without songs, no records, no birth dates, no birthdays, no names, no records, no family history, not one surname, not one house or frame of any of the 91 enslaved people at Woodlawn. There's an ancestor inside me, waving smoke signals, writing unchained words, telling me stories written from rice, written from fields, from laboring, from plantation. History planted in field, then washed by rain, harvested by interpreters. There is a deepening, rising in the voice of old, in the voice of ancestors, voices leaning up from sleeping bones. The doors are tilted from the other side to reclaim what was lost. Come, I can hear your echoes. Come, I can feel you breathing inside me. Come, I will hold your heavy hands of callus, of mud, sliding in between forbidden doors. The latch is removed. Come in. So many ancestors are present in me and my bones. They rattle with your skeletons. We are here to reclaim what history has lost. It is my wish for 6 chimneys to breathe you out from the soot of firewall places, to reveal your 91 names where you will glisten in sunlight and become more than an interpretation.
Something came over me. Emotions soar high above cloudy gray skies. Silent tears slide quietly down my face. Dabbed with cotton-laced handkerchief, warrior queen rides bravely, ready to see all my ancestors endured. Entering grounds of plantation, unkept grounds, unpainted shack, greet my entrance. Exquisite mansion with manicured lawns in sight at horizon. Gorgeous crepe myrtle, a favorite of mine. Sensational greeting to soothe my soul, ease my mind, wondering how would I have responded? Like queen leader I am today? Like Harriet going back and forth to get away? To be strong, to help others, to accept no wrong? Like Fannie Lou Hamer, sick and tired of being sick and tired. Something came over me. There's still superiority. We must stand strong to remain free. Do not be intimidated. Do not be afraid. Be true. Be real. Share rightness, goodness of life. Do what you feel Accept opportunities. Do not let fear be a factor. Replace fear with faith. Listen, trust, obey. Written in the Underwood Room at Woodlawn Plantation, August 2019.
This first poem is entitled First Walk. I am not being led through these genteel halls, I'm being pushed. Each threshold crossed feels like praise is being forced through fearful throats. The words of our guide eased out with reverence, as if the echo from these walls could actually slap you. And as they deliver their careful sermon, I wonder, was God ever inside here? The wood smells of elegant care and surfaces so polished that any particles daring to show up would undoubtedly slide off to the floor. After all, we are not here to see dirt, are we? Like a troublesome teen, I stand in places longer than I should, reach for delicate items I know I shouldn't, and nothing happens to me. This tour, though informative, ignored certain queries, like, are the brick and mortar walls thick enough to muffle the moans of the people outside? Did they ever use the same cross-stitch sewing style from these beautiful pillows to close the skin of the disobedient? I walk out the ravenous front entrance, and after 200 years, the Corinthian marble at the door still looks as if each slab had been carefully laid there by angelic hands, and they had. One more question, ma'am. Did the masters of Woodlawn ever realize just how close they were to God?
As we begin the second set and final set of poems, I'll read a poem that is less about the history of Woodlawn and more about working with these other poets as we experienced Woodlawn. It's titled Bells. Together, we are so wonderfully different, these four bells of us. Each our very own sound, each distinctly tuned to this world of need. In and through our ringing words of witness, our ready bells, eager each to tell the story of stories never told at all. Let your open ears hear the bolding bells that are held up high overhead, clanging hard with concerns of anger. And listen as much to our heart-held bells that echo over years and years of questions, full of whys and hows. Then hear and hear again the gonging bells that wake up our history, that call and call and call us to listen right now. Yes, hear these won't be silent ever again, shining, glistening bells. Listen to these voices joined to these voices so full that we almost can't. To these voices so sure that yes, indeed, We always will. Listen to these waiting bells in every one of us. May they ring through us just like tomorrow.
Thank you, Hiram. The next poem that I will be reading, I actually wrote this poem at Woodlawn. And you all, for the first time, will hear this poem. I've never read it. So it is entitled Our Marriage, and I am speaking of a marriage to the enslaved and myself, and really to all the poets and the enslaved. These unevenly divided halves will never fit into the haunting whole. There will always be a thirst to know more, a drip that will never go away, that will eventually only fill this cup of what can only be imagined. The sound of teeth clenching, the voice of hands being ripped away, the tearing pitch of wailing's loss. Who will carry the burden to rewrite what has been left out? Who will reassemble the broken pieces of our history, a shattered, distorted truth that keeps getting excluded, that keeps looking back at the holes that refuse the contributions of African Americans, slaves? I stopped to breathe. The whole idea of you falls out of blue skies, out of my head. It walks for miles, but cannot understand why this hand will write you counterclockwise. These poets are used for your completion. I am afraid of losing you again. My words that may not resemble you, that may leave you dead and erased again. Even in this marriage of us, now I search for you in the daunting ache of my skin, in the simmering flow of my blood, my shoulders heavy, prying open, Woodlawn's walls, its lawns and weeping organs, peeling back layers of paint, of skin, of ghosts, interpreting loss and lost. I have to unbuckle this whole damn room. I have to unbuckle it of its longings that swells of its past, of its brown and black shadows. A hoping sits in the center of me, a wildfire burning to uncover the veil of obscurity, to race up the curves of staircases with you, to play the strings of Nellie's heart with you, and the keys of her piano, to dance in rooms that you were not allowed to stay in or be in, to even scuff up floors with your markings, your initials, your 91 dreams. In my dream, I imagine your dark brown eyes. In this room, it's the one thing that takes up most space, besides knowing that the dead are here. I am married to your ghosts and the waking walls and their sleeping organs. At the start of burnt red sunsets, we repair the haunting halves of our marriage with mortar from your past and the blood of our future until stars dim our lights.
So heartfelt, Diane. Thank you. I wrote this poem about a month after coming home from Woodlawn. How would you feel? A feeling comes over me uncontrollably. I wonder how one race could feel superior to another. a horrible feeling, wondering, how would you feel if you or your loved ones were whipped and hung? How would you feel if your babies were sold to someone else, taken from you in middle of night, and you didn't know who or where? Lord have mercy, never to see your child again. Tell me, how would you feel? How would you feel if you had to stand by in silence while your wife was violated, raped, and abused? How would you feel if you could never pick enough bales of cotton in scorching hot sun? How would you feel if you could never pick up a book, were not allowed to learn, to read, or allowed to learn anything? Tell me, think about it. How would you feel? How would you feel if you had to walk around in rags all day, day in, day out, no shoes on feet, no food to eat? I want to know. Tell me, how would you feel? How would you feel if you had to enter through the back door or not at all? Eat in kitchen or not at all? My heart and soul says, let it be told, it would not feel good to you.
Thank you, Lady Di. This last poem is entitled The Signal. For the Curved Mirror. Yes, sir. How may I be of service? Would you like another man? See, I learned quickly. Never got hit once. Seen enough overseers erupt over Negroes who stepped out of place or just stood too tall. Still carry the ashes in my pockets to remind me. So I decided, right then and there, shook their fragments out of my hair, got myself straight. Now, I wear only the best clothes, eat the best food. I've been crowned the most blessed of all the cursed in 2,000 acres, so I stand here now. Ears and eyes, body with no mouth until addressed. My willingness to please and posture places me at the head. Mr. Lewis say we gonna make this plantation great again, so you can call me butt kisser. I'm just a prisoner of anticipation. I got good at counting how many times they lift their cups to drink. They take 4 sips, that's when I come out. If the guest knocks their tea down to the floor, I'm gonna make sure my apology swoops into the room before my body ever does. That damn Earl Grey been misbehaving all week and the teacup might have jumped. I stand in perfect stillness, racing for favor, eyes holding every curve of that butler's mirror, searching for a sign of life. I don't know what it's like to be called a man, but I do know I'm closer than I was yesterday, so yes, ma'am. Yes, sir, please. Let me get that for you.
Thank you to Diane, Lady Di, Patrick, Sylvia, Cliff, and Hiram for that powerful and moving and deeply personal series of expressions, line after line, that surely became, or surely touched those on the call as it did for me. The let's take some questions next, and then we'll close up with a few more poems. We do have a lot of comments that we'll start sharing with you also that you can see in the chat feed. And then after we're finished with the Q&A that we'll pull from the chat feed, then we'll go ahead and turn the time back over to Voices of Woodlawn and close with their words that you can leave, so that you can leave with some inspiration and some thought, food for thought. Before we do that though, we just want to remind you that you can always send in your suggestions and questions and comments. Trinity will go ahead and put our email in the chat box so that you can reach out to Woodlawn at any time as part of the community and to express your thoughts as well. This chat will be saved, and so we really want you to be able to read what everyone's been saying because it's pretty powerful. And please do watch for our monthly Black History programming and more opportunities to hear from the Voices of Woodlawn poets that we'll be having all through the year and years to come, as they are so core to our programming. So with that, let's go ahead and go to the questions. Let's see. First question is, do these poets have work that is printed that we could purchase?
Lady
Yes.
Di, would you like to respond?
Yes, we do have work, and I know my work is on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. So I have a book, Forever in Your Eyes, of poetry, and then, as I mentioned a little earlier when we were talking, a cookbook, Cooking Up South. And I know Diane has work, Hiram has work. Let's see what they have to say.
Well, yes, I do. I'm a children's book author as well, and I do have a book on Amazon, The Wisdom of Blue Apples. But as a collective for Voices of Woodlawn, we do not have a book at this time, but we do have, all of us individually, I'm sure, is a lot of poems.
Well, maybe that can be the next project at Woodlawn, huh?
Yes.
Yeah, as both Lady Di and Diane, and I think Patrick would say too, we all have individual work, but we're still kind of contemplating the notion of putting some of these poems together with some of Diane's artwork. By the way, that artwork that was shown at the opening was all done by Diane Wilbon Parks in reaction to her visit to Woodlawn. And so we're thinking about collecting all of that into some sort of collection. Thanks, Susan.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else on that question? Okay, so there were several things that came through for me and for a lot of people who are on the feed. There's several folks are saying some of the same things, and I'll let you know that thread between what happened here. We need to address that at Woodlawn, and this is definitely the time that we'll be doing, and your organization is part of how we do this. And then Sylvia, I think you said we need to find out and gather what was and what was not. Diane, you said it's more than interpretation. So several folks mentioned that on the feed. This question comes up. What do you mean by it is more than interpretation? How do those words go together, and what should it say? What should that header be?
Well, actually, both of those statements were in my work. I said at the beginning, and I also said at the end, because their lives, I think we all know that those of us who have visited Woodlawn have been erased. So to be more than an interpretation would mean that to have some information, something that you can hold as tangible and relevant to their lives, which we don't have. So the only thing that we can do as poets and, as interpreters is to give the story of what was or what was not according to how we felt in that space. So it's all responsive writing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But their lives were more than that. Mm-hmm. We are only surmising, from being on the grounds and feeling having these strong feelings when we were inside Woodlawn.
Mm-hmm. Other thoughts on that? Beautiful, thank you, Diane.
Even though I didn't write those words you had said, Diane did, I could feel them. And I do feel that it is more of an interpretation, us being there and with the imaginations of poets, like all of the artists that are out there and our audience and us, we have a great imagination. We could sense and feel the spirit of our ancestors and listen to what they are saying or possibly said in regards and want us as poets to bring it alive. And that's what we continuously do. And we still are hearing messages from our ancestors.
Others?
Patrick, did you want to?
No, I you know, to echo the other sentiments, I think that multiple visits are necessary, and it was definitely necessary for me. I was very raw coming in, not knowing what to expect, not knowing how I was going to feel, and you know, my initial response was very it was very choppy. It was very broken. It was very bitter. But that was about me. So I had to leave and then come back. And then my return visit, I really began to put myself into the, you know, the minds and the experiences of those who were there. That's what helped me.
Patrick, I wanted to say that, can you give us a little bit of how you may come about the feelings of the enslaved? Because you do such a great job when you stand there. I can picture you up in that little corner and being that enslaved in that painting up in there and just watching their key to bring the next serving of tea or whatever. Can you give us just a bit of how you come about being enslaved, one of the enslaved?
It was a bit of studying. You know, I was not to say I'm a social scientist or anything, but I study people. I watch people, and you know, I really, you know, even during the tour, you know, that is what I did one day. And I know Hiram had a poem about the mirror too that struck both of us. And you know, during the tour, that is, you know, as everybody moved on, I kind of placed myself physically where I imagined the butler to be, and then, you know, looked at the mirror and just kind of, you know, found that experience and just kind of put myself there. Poems are always happening to you. You just have to be able to catch them when they happen. So
Thank you. You did it wonderful.
Thank you.
He does. Susan,
I like the way you share that poem about the children, the little children, you know, including them. We always like to include the youth and just the feelings of the children and just wanting to make the masters happy and picking wildflowers and bringing them to them.
Yes, people don't really, people forget that, you know, there were children growing up in this atmosphere, in this environment. And so I tried to create a poem that addressed that,
Susan, one thing that's really clear, or that should be, is that the three poets, Lady Di, Diane Wilbon Parks, and Patrick, were extremely brave to come to Woodlawn and to expose themselves to the history there and then write about it. Your question also had the word more in it. And when I hear the word more in relation to Woodlawn, I think of two things. First off, what we experience there is more than history. It is, in fact, living today. It is our legacy that we suffer from, I would say, today. So it is history, absolutely, but it's history that impacts our everyday today. And the other more is that these poems could have been written at just about any historic estate plantation in the US, because just about every one of them had this same kind of sad history involving an enslaved community. So in many respects, as I say, what you've heard today is that, but it's more than that.
I just want to say to that, Hiram, that you say we were brave, and we were, but you are our fearless leader, because you gave us the initial opportunity to experience and to bring all of this alive. And now we're able to share it across the world. And I thank you. And I also thank all the international poets that are on here right now.
Yes,
that's
indeed.
pretty exciting.
And you know, we might also want to turn to our poet musician Cliff and see if he has any reaction.
I was going to ask that. And Cliff, if you don't mind, Cliff, tell us from your perspective, using the word interpretation and the word more, how does music play into that, and how do you elevate and project their voices even further, and yours?
Well, the blues and spirituals are the music of the enslaved, and it's when you tap into the feelings in those genres of music, I believe you're tapping into the lives of the people who were enslaved and lived there at the time, and it's quite a feeling to go back there. And I think, you know, music is sort of the direct channel into emotion, and it's very powerful to bring those feelings into the instrument and try to capture a little bit of what they might have been feeling.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Well, we have a runway of questions. So if, with your permission, I'll go ahead and ask you some more. How did you all get started? And that's quite a story, because it does involve Woodlawn.
I can tell you how we got started. It was, let me say this. Hiram was there for a writing residency, and was the only person that I've ever spoken to who's non-African American that cared enough to ask us the question of how we felt. The whole time that he escorted Lady Di and I into the area, even before that, when he asked, he was very concerned. But I have never had anyone ask me basically what Lady Di says in her poem: how do you feel, and do you think you would be able to do this? And he handled us with very tender, gentle kid gloves, and we appreciate the whole process. That's how we got started, really, as an invitation to come. But it was more than that, because Hiram cared enough to say, you know, what are your thoughts? How do you feel about coming and expressing? And so I think the invitation really opened the doors that you're seeing now, as art, as well as music, as well as our poetry. So Hiram is the reason why we're here.
And I just want to add that he added such a lovely atmosphere for us inside the mansion, where we sat and wrote our poetry, and where we also ended up having lunch. But this gorgeous tablecloth that he had on the table, African fabric, similar to my head wrap actually, but that he had gotten from Africa. And that was on the table, I remember. And then he always brings flowers, and he makes it comfortable. He makes you comfortable. Hiram has such a warm, tender-hearted spirit, and very talented, but he embraces all people. That's how I ended up being there. Hiram being my friend.
And I appreciate I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to pile on. I'm going to pile on with praise. Yeah, I just want to say thank God for the artists like Hiram. I honestly, I don't know if it's left or right brain, but whatever side that is, I think the artists are the ones who are really going to save us. They're the ones who are connecting us. And Hiram's initial residency, and he was there, he recognized there was a need. He did it. Not much respect to Woodlawn because I understand that this isn't their first time, opening their doors to artists like us. And, I think there was a project where they have like reimagined furniture.
Mm-hmm.
In these beautiful ways. Maybe somebody can speak on that, but just the connection to the arts is always there. And that was how we got our foot in the door, and I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. So we have a couple of other questions. That reference to the art, though, yes, we have about a 3.5 year history there of really diving into the arts, African-American artists in particular. So go to the website and you can see some of that as well, this work that Voices of Woodlawn will be doing. And art says the unspeakable things and the unimaginable things. And so that's why it's so vital right now. And we feel it's really vital. There is a question in here that's about the what's going to happen here at Woodlawn. Are we thinking about rewriting all the histories? Absolutely. We are very much into it. I'm an interim director. We've got, we are doing the search right now for an executive director that will very much come from and be driving and leading these stories, these erased and missing stories in the interpretation and redoing the entire interpretation. But most importantly, the words Voices of Woodlawn, that's you all, that's our presenters, but it's also the communities around and the descendants that are really important voices for our reinterpretation, more interpretation that we're going to be doing. So another question, and I think this is a beautiful one, would you describe your poetry and creating poetry at Woodlawn as healing? Or what adjectives would you insert?
Thought-provoking, very emotional for me, as a lot of you probably have seen. That's a continuous feeling for me. It also brings a feeling of gladness that I'm able to give voice to my ancestors. So you could say a bittersweet feeling.
Mm-hmm. Others?
Diane?
Well, it's for me, it is a reckoning. I think for a long time, I did not write in this vein. I didn't write this way. And it had a lot to do with my childhood living in Georgia, where there was a lot of racism. So I suppressed it. And it wasn't until I went to Woodlawn that I recognized the suppression of my writing in my writing. So for me, it has opened a door to come back to myself and come back to those experiences and to write of them. And to also, I feel like I'm being pushed to do this beautiful art that I've never done before. So, maybe someone is encouraging me or inside me, guiding my hands and such. So I won't take all the credit for sure, but the artwork and the poems are explosive now. So I credit that moment.
To follow up on what Diane's saying, it's said that the blues are sad, but they're actually cathartic. When you play them, when you're expressing, you're bringing all the sorrows, the sadness, the challenges of that life out into the open, and it's healing. It's a way to overcome the pain. So I think music, art, all of these things are healing.
And Patrick, you expressed a trajectory or an evolution of your feelings. And I suspect that's how, as more and more of this history comes forward and the interpretation is more truthful, inclusive, and represents these missing stories more prominently as a priority, that communities as a whole are going to be going through some of that same pathway. Do you have learning that came from that, or advice that you would have?
Well, yeah. Let me, before I answer that, let me just say that the healing part, that I look at it as two different types of healing. There's individual healing, right? You know, that I experience and that we all experience as we go through this process. But then there's also collective healing, you know, as a society that we all need to have. There's a reconciliation, right? And I feel like that part, like, so the inside that healing, you know, that's my internal work. I got to do that. But the collective work can only come from acknowledgement. We can do this all day, but until we are received and heard and understood, you know, that part, that's where we all have to do work together. We can do this and talk to, this is like preaching to the choir. We can sit in a room and do these poems all the day long, but there's still, you know, 2/3 of the country that don't get it. So, you know, that's who we need. That's who needs to get it.
Yeah, and for me, Susan, it's maybe less about healing, because I don't think I'm anywhere close to feeling that I'm contributing to a healing process. It's more about revealing the incredibly open-ended questions, one of which I ask in one of my poems, what happened here, and why and how? And just as importantly, how does what happened at Woodlawn or throughout our country during slavery affect us now? It is affecting us now. I'm convinced of that, but I'm still learning about all the ways that is affecting us now. So for me, it's less healing and more kind of open-ended questions.
You should have been talking to poets long ago. Line upon line, your grand mastery sure shows through in everything that you all are saying. So if you have a couple more thoughts, we can go with that, and then let's turn the time back over to you all at Voices for Woodlawn, and to close us out with a little bit of music from Cliff and Diane and Lady Di. Any other last thoughts or last questions from the group?
A collective thank you to Susan, Christelle, Trinity, the whole team, Heather, the whole team at Woodlawn for being welcoming and open to not only this presentation, but the whole notion of an ongoing partnership where we'll be learning, they'll be learning, but as we look forward, all of the ways that we can learn and hopefully heal together. And also I want to quickly make sure I thank the Inner Loop, which offered the door that I was able to walk through in terms of a residency at Woodlawn. Thanks to the Inner Loop for that opportunity.
Thank you. Now back to you all to leave us with a few additional words. Thank you all.
I want to thank all the poets. I mentioned the international ones, but we have a lot of local poets. And I want to thank all the local poets that came out to support, and also all the people that came out to hear this. And as Patrick had mentioned, we need to put action behind our words.
Yes, yes. Well, before we end, Lady Di will end with a wonderful poem, but I'm only going to leave you with an excerpt from Hopeful Birds. And hopefully between myself, Lady Di, Cliff will have an opportunity to close us out in music as well. And I'm only giving you an excerpt of this poem, Hopeful Birds. And this is in the voice of an enslaved man. It rained here, not from the tears of gray skies, but those who shed and bled here. They watered this land, grew it up, these fields, those hands, this place, their demands, this ghostly space, 91 enslaved and erased.
Thank you. Great job. That voice interpretation. Bricks calling my name. I want to say that this poem came right after walking the grounds with Patrick and Diane and Hiram. We were walking the grounds, and the bricks that cover the grounds were just fascinating to me. Bricks, wondering what exactly you're saying to me. Each brick lines path to doorway of historic Woodlawn plantation mansion. Each brick handmade, each brick inlaid by hand, entwining around across 120 acres of land, leading to magical, mysterious wonder. Questions unanswered. Do we really want to know stories? Can we imagine all encountered? Dream dreams of our ancestors' sacrifice, dreams of their struggles, dreams of their horrid suffering, suffering that strengthens our endurance. Confidently document our legacy. Without a doubt, leave photos, writings, and poetry for our children to see, to share with their children and their children's children. History engraved like fossils in corner of our minds. Bricks are calling my name. Tell me, my brave ancestors, what else are they saying? Dedicated to Dr. Hiram Larew.